Hi there, welcome to the trade. Let's get across just briefly what's going on in international markets, what traders are watching. And the US President Donald Trump says he's raising tariffs on some South Korean imports to 25%, saying that South Korean legislature is not playing game. US Donald Trump's immigration approval has dropped to a record low amidst mass protests against shooting of civilians by ICE. Stocks rose, as we've mentioned, and the yen is strengthened against the dollar. Still some conjecture about intervention in currency markets there. So we'll be keeping an eye on that one. And we had a major winter storm across the eastern United States, and that has really put the pins into the energy sector there after the storm has knocked out crude output. But the focus firmly on U.S. tech as investors await results coming through this week. Let's get a check-in on where those stocks are tracking. And for that, Hebe Chen from Vantage Markets joins me now. Hebe, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Can we start by taking a look at Microsoft, one of those real heavy hitters and benefiting from many of the tailwinds that we're seeing in the tech space?
Morning, Nadine. Thank you for having me. Yes, I think we're coming back for the long weekend. I realized this week is really packed. Apart from the macro events, we have big tech company we're going to report the earnings, and Microsoft is set to report the earnings on Wednesday after U.S. market closes. And the quite interesting point, as you mentioned, the prices, the big tech company just experienced quite a huge pullback. For Microsoft, it's about 20% pullback. And given there's still so many macro headwinds that are developing at the moment, especially the valuation concerns, I don't think it's a realistic expectation this earnings could restart a rally. I think it's probably more about a deeper fundamentally checkup. And in terms of the expectation, I'm putting up as you can see from the middle top there, there's the earning per shares anticipation. So I think overall, the investors still expecting a pretty solid and positive result for Microsoft, as they always do. But in terms of prices wise, that you can see the chart also reinforce that reset and a bit of the cautious narrative. The stock has rolled back from the two post earnings peak last year. You can see there's a double top structure that's very clearly surfaced there, and the price is now broken below the neckline, showing a bit of the midterm pulling back, and now it's also trading below all the simple moving averages, 20, 50, 200 days simple moving averages, so keeping the short-term buyers pretty cautious. In terms of near-term prices, I would say that the price will potentially first stabilize in between 425 to 438. You can see a bit of price gap here, and probably more substantial medium-term support. I'll probably looking down a little bit, which is a prior price gap from the May 2025. In terms of momentum-wise, I would say a bit mixing, but improving. RSI is turning higher. You can see the golden cross there, but MACD still remains negative, but it's flattening, suggesting a downside pressure is easing. But overall, we still probably need some time to confirm the bottoming out at the current point, the structure. Earnings will be a key in determining whether this will become a base building phase or potentially a deeper consolidation for Microsoft.
Okay, so the results super important, as they always are.
Yeah.
What about Apple? What's happening there?
Well, like Microsoft, Apple also experienced a sharp pullback, slightly better, about 15% from recent highs. But in terms of structure-wise, some points, for example, the Apple also already dipped below the 20 and 50, but yet to breaking the 200-day simple moving average. So this price line here, I think, is a very crucial supporting level for the upcoming earnings. As you can see, the 235 level. On the other hand, I also want to highlight is the pattern for the Apple's post earnings. Are putting up the red square here. You can see that in the past 5 earnings, Apple often showing a dip first before that recovered from that level pattern. So that's probably one of the interesting patterns for the earning traders to notice and probably look deeper into that. Fundamentally, the debate around Apple is much broader than Microsoft. It's not just about AI. It's probably more about the overall demand conditions for Apple, particularly for the China exposure, particularly for its hardware soft in the cycle. So the critical point will be whether or not these services the revenues could offset the softness in this hardware cycle. So that will be the key watching point. Apart from that, as I mentioned, the price is now taking the support from the 200-day simple moving average, and now we're looking for the next resistance level back about 245 level. That's a previous bottom level. I think that will be the key resistance and pressure level. In terms of momentum wise, it's probably even softer than Microsoft. RSI is drifting towards the low 40s, but MACD still stays negative and showing no signs of the flattening as Microsoft. So I would say in terms of the bottoming out, it probably will be taking a little bit longer than Microsoft to really find the bottom at this current setup.
Okay, so you alluded to the fact that it is a big week, not just when it comes to earnings, but also on the macro front. And part of that is because we've got this really punchy quarterly inflation read due here tomorrow. We've got a lot of talk about intervention with the yen. How is the yen doing against the strong Australian dollar itself on the crosses?
Yeah, exactly. This pair, the Aussie dollars versus JPY, I think it's probably likely to be one of the probably more volatile and macro event sensitive pair. And it's very interesting also because this pair is now trading just below its 2-decade high, nearly about 109 level. And that's the record landmark about back into July 2024 when the interest rate in Australia at its peak. But now even that we have lowered down our interest rate, but given the increasing, as you mentioned about CPI, that the increasing back on another rate rise by RBA, now this pair is now coming back into the very high level again. In terms of the technical standpoint, I would say that momentum remains pretty strong. As you can see, the price is still above all the simple moving averages. As you can see that the trend line is getting steeper. But I would say that also the momentum is getting softer, given that a couple of things. You can see the RSI and MACD also showing a bit of signs of flattening, and also that increasing back of the intervention from the Japanese Central Bank or Japanese government will potentially push up the Japanese yen and making this pair much softer. Overall, I would say that the immediate level to watch is about 105, and then below there will be 103 to 102 level. Overall, I think the upside potential is still quite valid. I think that will probably last until that the RBA really having their decision made in February and what sort of low map into the end of 2026. But overall, this is the pair that I think is set to experience quite a lot of volatilities in the days and also weeks ahead.
Thank you, Hebe Chen. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Nadine.
All right, that is the trade for today. We'll be back in just a moment.